Well, they said we shouldn't do it, but we've been waiting for 2 years. What are the odds that the Mueller report is really going to come out the day I record this? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, we're going to take a pre-recorded television risk here and ask your opinion on some things that could possibly be breaking news before we get done recording this.
Okay.
But I think that the answers that you give will be prophetic, perhaps, and therefore we will look back on this moment in history as everybody remembers where they were when Bill Whittle predicted what would happen with the Mueller report before it happened.
Did you say prophetic or pathetic?
Yes. And so here's the situation. The Mueller report allegedly could release as early as today, and there's much debate right now about whether the Attorney General, who is to receive this report from the special counsel, should release the unredacted version of it. Senator Dianne Feinstein asked William Barr, the Attorney General, directly if he would do so, and Barr sort of danced around and gave an answer according to regulations that he would do whatever it is that he chose to do. So, Bill, number one, should the Trump administration, or let's say in this case, the Attorney General, not technically a hand puppet of the Trump administration, should the Attorney General release the full details of the Mueller report?
Well, first of all, let me just say, when you say that the Attorney General is not the hand puppet of the Trump administration, that is a long way towards American government than having the Attorney General be the attack dog for the government, the watchdog for the progressive agenda, and the lapdog of the media. See what I did there?
Well, and I'm not saying that William Barr is not the hand puppet of President Trump, but he should not be.
My point is that compared to the previous attorney generals in terms of Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder, I expect to get some reasonably fair play out of this. So when you ask me, should they get the redacted version? My answer, frankly, Scott, is I don't care. I really don't care. I suppose there are some people that are fascinated with reading every single page of this 200,000 page report or whatever it's going to come in, or maybe it's going to be 2 paragraphs, who knows. But I don't care. The only thing I care about is there's solid evidence enough solid evidence to warrant impeachment proceedings. And my prophetic and pathetic guess is that there is not. And the reason that I think that there is not is because I don't see how Nancy Pelosi would have said impeachment is off the table 5 days ago or a week ago, whatever it was, as we record this, if she didn't know that there was nothing in that report. So I suspect that this thing is going to be what we always thought it would be, which is a giant fizzle. I suspect also they will make an enormous effort to magnify anything that they found into genocidal proportions, but none of that really matters. I think most of us who dealt with this before know that's how the media works. The only question is going to be, are there legal grounds really for beginning impeachment proceedings? And I suspect there are not. And if there are not, then it's like Ricky Ricardo used to say, Mueller, you got some splaining to do.
Well, there does seem to be, as you indicated from Nancy Pelosi, a lot of table setting being done on the side of the opponents of President Trump. There's a New York Times column by former FBI Director James Comey that's basically saying what he hopes that the Mueller report will include. And, he couches this by saying that he thinks that the president is morally unfit for office and that the report should be as transparent as possible. But at the end, Comey comes down and says he hopes it will not lead to impeachment because that could lead some of Trump's supporters to believe a coup is underway. And he certainly doesn't want that. He would rather honestly beat the president in the upcoming election.
They got nothing, Scott.
That's So what if it is, as you indicate here, what if it is like the Comey report on Hillary Clinton, where they come out with a bunch of sort of broadly damning evidence, but then call for no action?
That won't happen. That is to deny the perpetual headwind that Republicans face all the time. Hillary Clinton could commit the most egregious and obvious crimes and have the director of the FBI come up and indict her for 45 minutes and then say, however, we don't recommend prosecution because instead of using gross negligence or whatever the legal term is, he used something like, extreme malfeasance or carelessness. I think extreme carelessness, which means exactly the same thing. So to suggest that Trump is going to get the same kind of, ring of power invisibility that Hillary Clinton gets is nuts. If there's anything there, and there certainly was there when Hillary was going through this process. If there was anything there, then they would do their best to crucify him. And that Comey statement just furthers my belief that there's no evidence there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So let's just assume for the minute that our reading of the tea leaves are right. And to be honest with you, Comey saying what he said bolsters the case that there's nothing there. But for Pelosi to say that, yeah, he's not worth impeaching, that to me is an admission that there's nothing there. So let's just assume, for the sake of the argument, that while they're gonna make just enormous amounts of whipped cream out of whatever froth they can generate, let's just say that there's nothing essentially in that Mueller report. Now, the question is, what does Donald Trump do about it? And I have had certainly seen many occasions where I thought the best course for the president was to basically say nothing, don't fuel the fire or fan the flames. Basically, just kind of let this one die down. But I don't feel that about this. If it turns out that the Mueller report comes back with a big fat nothing, I think Donald Trump needs to run on this. I think this needs to be his 2020 campaign strategy, is to say that I told you, and the people that voted for me knew that this government was not our government anymore, didn't belong to the American people, belonged to a small group of elitists who decided who's supposed to be president and who's going to do what and so on, and I name them. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, and all the rest. I said, now, these people had their plans and the apple cart upset back in 2016 when you, the American people, decided you didn't want to be ruled by this elite. And from that day, from that instant, from the morning after the election, they have been doing everything they can to discredit me, to stop me, and to stop everything that I'm trying to do, because what I'm trying to do is what I said I would do for the American people. And I would use the Mueller report as my exhibit A of the witch hunt that has been surrounding Donald Trump, and of the unfairness of the coverage. I'd use it as a degree to basically raise funds and get votes based on the degree of corruption in the government and the degree of complicity with the media.
Yeah, and I could very easily see the Trump administration coming out with something that said 3 years, X million dollars, 75 million minutes of news coverage, no collusion. And that seems, at least at this point, a likely conclusion of it. But it also seems that the Democrats have already moved on. They have begun a series of probes in Congress having to do with Trump's tax situation, with the Trump Tower negotiations in Moscow, and with the revelations, so-called, from former Trump fixer and attorney Michael Cohen before a Senate panel. All of that, or was that the House Oversight Committee? House Oversight Committee. But anyway, all of that, the Democrats see that to their advantage to ride this pony. Why would President Trump also see it to his advantage to keep talking about the things that people think are wrong with him?
Well, because the media does nothing but talk about these things 24/7. And if Trump comes back with the Mueller report that's got nothing on it, it's vindication for Trump's position. It is, honest to God, it's Trump just pointing to the scoreboard, right? It's like, okay, you guys say you played a better game than we did. What's the final score? But I would go much further than this, because bringing that case of witch hunt to the American people as evidence, and the wasted money and all the rest, I would do all of that as my initial tactic. And what I would do, if he hasn't started already, I would start on it the hour after that report is released. I would then start an inquiry into the Mueller report. I'd start an inquiry into how this turned into the kind of story it is, based on essentially no evidence whatsoever. I would want to see the steps by which this probe was launched, what evidence was used to launch the probe, what actors were involved in terms of making this thing happen, and who can it be traced back to.
So who does this? Does the Attorney General do this?
I don't know.
Do you want to see Congress tying up more time in hearings?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, I do. Yes, absolutely. In fact, if we could take Congress's time and tie all of it up with hearings all the time, the country would be much, much better off. I think we ought to just have them basically be the role of Judge Judy and adjudicate, whose refrigerator
I'm afraid
this
their
is.
staffers would still be writing legislation with help from their cronies.
You're probably right. We'll have to do something about them too. Maybe we can get them to,
Well,
maybe
let's
they can learn to code.
Yeah, that's right. Learn to code. Let's take the counterpoint on this, although it seems highly unlikely. Robert Mueller has played everything very close to the vest, allegedly confiscating cell phones from all members of his team anytime they were having discussions about this, releasing virtually no information at all from his office during the investigation. So we really don't know much other than indictments that have been handed down to about characters around the Trump administration. Let's say he comes out with a report that says, while we may not be able to conclusively prove this, it seems pretty clear that President Trump and or his campaign had close ties with Vladimir Putin and his crew in a way that indicates a level of coordination to affect the outcome of the 2016 election. So how do you react when you hear that news?
I react to that by saying, even though we can't prove it, means that they can't prove it. This whole country is based on the presumption of innocence. I can accuse you of raping children, and if I can't prove it, that doesn't mean you're guilty. It means I have failed in my primary duty, and when I brought the accusation, I'm responsible for the slander that's attached to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, ask the Duke lacrosse team what happens after that.
Yeah, and see, now this is, I'm glad you mentioned them, because this is the pattern of the left. They will go, and I think probably the most clear example of this was with the Kavanaugh confirmation, right? So you dredge out this story from 30 years before. Can't remember the name of where I was, who was there. My friends say that they will support the story. They don't support the story. The whole thing with Dr. Ford. And when it's over, what are the consequences for her telling this monumental lie that almost changed the course of American history? What are the consequences for the slander that she perpetuated against Brett Kavanaugh? What's the slander?
There's no cost there.
There is no cost. Exactly. That's exactly correct. There's no cost. And as long as there's no cost for libel and slander and baseless accusations and bearing false witness, then this is going to continue. If it were me, I would put the FBI on it. I'd love to have a congressman or a senator pick this up and run with it. It would make me personally delighted if Ted Cruz were be the guy to carry this ball, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I think it would do him a lot of good in terms of his standing in the Republican Party and get him, some real publicity if he finds something. But more importantly, it would be an indication that final breach in the Republican Party had been healed. But whether it's him or not, or a congressman or not, somebody needs to look into this, and somebody needs to say, this is what your government has decided to do to you. If I was Trump, I would never let this point go. I would say, it's not what they did to me. I can take it. I've been in real estate for 60 years. If you don't have thick skin in this business that I was in before I became president, you're just roadkill. So it's not about what they did to me. So what they did to you, it's what they did to you, what they did to the American people. You made a decision that you didn't want this government to be running out of control the way it is. You elected me to go and drain the swamp and fix this problem. And this government has fought back against the will of the people that it's supposed to represent for the last 2.5 years. And here's the evidence of it. So what are we going to do now, folks? What are we going to do now? It's not just a question of being reelected in 2020. The question is, what are we going to do about this out of control government in terms of the representation, and also, most importantly, what do we do about this immortal, metastasizing cancer called the state bureaucracy, the so-called deep state, which makes decisions based on the cocktail parties they go to in Washington, D.C. And I say, you really just have to, sometimes you just have to nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. And I would go and make my 2020 campaign. Here's the evidence of what I said in 2016. I've been working as hard as I can on this, and now we need your help to elect people who are going to go back in Washington and return it to its rightful owners. Not make it Republican, not make it Democrat. I would make the point of making that point. Not saying I want to send people to make it Republican or conservative or anything. I want to help Americans get people in Washington who understand that they work for the people of the United States of America, not the other way around.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we here at BillWhittle.com work for the members at BillWhittle.com who have joined up by going to that website and clicking the Become a Member link, and we're grateful for those people. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, we are recording this at a time when it's possible that news events will will get to you before we do. And I did that intentionally because I think that even though we analyze the daily news 5 days a week here, I wanted to show that the principles behind it really are not dependent upon the daily news.
Right.
It's not a situational ethics thing, and whatever the outcome of this report, Bill Whittle's opinion would have been unshaken one way or the other. So,
yeah, if there were tons of evidence that he committed felonies while he was, then I'd say he needs to go to jail.
And you need to go to BillWhittle.com right now and sign up if you're not a member. You can pass go, collect $200. Do not go directly to jail, however. And we would be grateful for it. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.